Have you ever cared deeply about a cause, but just couldn't get people on board? Or maybe your Facebook feed has a few people who blast the shame, blame, blowhorn for their cause. You know what I'm talking about. Letting you know that you're a privileged, racist, planet-killing narcissist and you can #do better. My next guest is someone who has taken a completely different approach to rallying for her cause. She's the executive director of Our Corner, an environmental nonprofit. She took the role in 2017, and since then, the organization has experienced both growth in community involvement and brand awareness. She's also the very first person to ever be on my podcast. I'm talking episode 1. Imagine being asked to come on a podcast and the host hasn't even recorded a single episode and can't articulate what the show is even about. That is what she said yes to. She graciously offered her time. And because I was an inexperienced podcaster, we ran out of time before discussing what the episode was even about. So she's here today for a take 2. We're going to explore how inspiring instead of shaming can rally people for a cause and the myths and resistance she overcomes daily in the environmental space. Courageous connector, community leader, green go-getter, Sigrid Rehrig. Sigrid, thanks for being here.
Thank you. So nice.
I think it's about time that we took another stab at this, don't you?
Yeah, now you have some more practice. I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I had fun on the first one.
I had fun too, and it was such good energy. But I think this is it's a good topic. It's an important topic, and you are good at rallying people for a cause, especially a cause, environmentalism, that tends to have a lot of, I don't know, like people get tripped up in it a lot. You know what I mean?
Yes, they do.
So I thought it would be fun to kind of walk through some of those trip ups and as a path to kind of lead us to where you've been and the experience that you've had since 2017. So sure. The first one I have, well, I'm going to call it, "This is why we can't have nice things." It's where the path before you was not blazed. It was a dumpster fire.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm sure, you know, and so for people who don't connect with that, I'm talking about how, I don't know, PETA filed a lawsuit on behalf of a monkey and how the 20-somethings destroyed precious pieces of artwork with tomato soup, right?
Yes. It's a little extreme.
Yes. So how do you distance yourself from that kind of bad behavior within the umbrella of environmentalism?
Yeah. So, you know, it's funny when you had mentioned the art destroyers, you know, I haven't even heard very many people talk about them. You know, you just kind of see it on the news and it's like a passing thing and then it's like on to the next thing, you know? So it's almost like, what impact have they really made? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm so curious. And I was doing some research, just a slight side note. I was doing some research. I was trying to figure out, like, has anything resulted from that? And I wasn't able to find anything. So if any of your listeners or viewers have any insight on that, I would be super curious to hear if anything has resulted from those protests. But
yeah, I'm going to say probably not, but yeah.
Yeah, right. So at Our Corner, formerly Keep Pensacola Beautiful, we just take a little bit more of like a practical kind of roll up your sleeves kind of attitude. We try to just jump right in and be the people to do the work that needs to be done. And then from there, you know, people kind of see what you're doing and they're like, "Oh, I want to help. Can I help?" And we're like, "Yeah, come help." So, you know, we like to say that we talk trash and fight dirty.
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of like our unofficial tagline. And like people really connect with that because, you know, we get our hands dirty, like literally. Like there are things I've picked up at cleanups and people are like, "Don't you want a glove?" I'm like, "Nah." Okay. So, I mean, you know, we pick up litter and there's a lot of environmental issues that we don't focus on that, you know, I still think are fascinating and I love to talk about. But, yeah, we talk trash and fight dirty, and we try to pick up the litter as best we can.
I could see where that would be a much more effective strategy because I'm thinking about this other guest that I had on the show who talked about the mammalian brain and how our ancient biology affects our modern lives and that sort of thing. And she was talking about, the brain chemicals, oxytocin, serotonin, those sorts of things. And one of them, I think it's serotonin. Is that the connector? Maybe it's oxytocin. Obviously, I learned a ton from that. I need to go review my notes. But you can gain those happy brain chemicals by watching other people do good things. That's why we love those videos on, social media of people doing good things. But then I think it has another effect for causes like yours where people can join in and thus they're incentivized to increase those good feelings by being hands-on. Instead of just like these other groups, I swear they spend more time thinking about how they're going to high-five each other after they do these ridiculous protests than they actually think about, is this making a difference?
Exactly. And, a lot of the problems is that, environmentalism is an abstract concept in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And the impacts are not immediately in front of you. But on a local level, the things that we can immediately impact, like litter being one of them, it feels good for people to contribute in that way and kind of see the immediate before and after. We do like social media stories where we take a before picture and then, we do tap to clean. So it's like, and then we show the after picture. And so getting people involved in that, it does incentivize them to be involved again because they like that feeling.
I think that's what differentiates kind of your approach from some of the other environmental causes that I have explored over the years is you're not afraid to take this like digital approach with the very hands-on real analog, if you will, cause. Some environmental causes seem to really just repel all things digital and have all these rules about what you can and can't post, but it's working against them. I really like how you start with the end in mind. Like the end goal is that there is no litter to pick up. And so we can only do that if we are all participating, not just the, 5 people on a Saturday once a month or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And we do acknowledge too that, we are a downstream solution instead of an upstream solution. So ideally, we would love to get more involved in the prevention side of things. But right now, we're just not at that point where we can have that much influence or have that capacity, even as an organization, to start influencing the upstream, So eventually that we would love to get into that. But, there has been research passed down to us from our national affiliate, which is Keep America Beautiful. Even though we changed our name, we still are an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful, Keep Florida Beautiful, that affiliate network. There's research that has been passed down from them that says, it's a social norm, littering. So if you are in an area that's very littered and someone's like, what's one more piece? What's one more piece of litter? It's fine. There's already a ton of litter here. So, if you go into an area and clean it up on a repeat basis, eventually over time, the research suggests that people will stop littering there, eventually.
Right, because then it will be the cool thing or they don't want to stand out as the one person that littered. And that's interesting that you say that you're downstream versus upstream because that's not anything I'd ever considered. But what a good tip for anyone who has a cause, environmental or otherwise, to understand your placement. And to know what kind of leverage you have, what kind of backing that you have so that you know what kind of difference you can make. Which kind of leads me to my next, point of resistance potentially is that a lot of people feel like a drop in the bucket when it comes to making a difference. You talked about, the reverse of that, which is you don't want to be the one person who throws trash on the ground. But if there's lots of trash, who cares? A lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, I've picked up this area, a million times, or let's talk about something bigger, global warming. They feel like, okay, so I bought a Prius, it's global warming is still a big problem. So how do you overcome that feeling of people that their small individual actions don't feel significant?
Right. Yeah, we run into this a lot. We do programs and educational workshops within our community, and it's really just kind of about education and like connecting with people on an individual level, because you ultimately find out what they are passionate about, and you can connect. Everything connects back to environmentalism, whether someone likes it or not. So finding that thing that they really care about, and then saying, well, hey, like, this cause impacts that thing that you care about. So like, yeah, it is a lot in this realm, of environmental sustainability. It is a lot about like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And like, that is a huge roadblock, because people don't want to change their lifestyle or like how they do things day to day, because the society we live in now is just jam packed. Like, it's always about what else can you fit into a day. There's no time to slow down. There's no time to, change your habits that are already streamlined for efficiency's sake. So that's a really good question. It's just, we just try to tell people, like, it's kind of like ants. Like, ants are these tiny little critters, and like, they can do huge things when they're teamed up. So that's a really good question. I'm trying to figure out how to
I think I thought of
that.
an example, because when you said you find out what they care about, I mean, you're talking about like what their hot button is.
Yeah.
And you're right. A lot of things do go back to some form of environmentalism. A hot button for a lot of women in their 30s and 40s is fertility. And we know from research that certain kinds of plastics are impacting fertility. Not actually more in males, surprisingly. I'm not sure why that is, but both males and females their fertility is being affected because microplastics are in everything, like even in our water. So I could see that's like one example that came to mind, is a hot button that people would go, oh, okay, so if I choose glass instead of plastic, if I choose natural fibers instead of synthetic fibers, every time I do laundry, it will, help by reducing those plastics. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are the types of things that we try to connect with, and saying like, well, if you make this one little switch, that might impact the hot button topic that you care about.
I think it probably creates some market signals too, which is something that is like a new concept to me. When you think about like toothpaste, for example, toothpaste was just, you had like 2 or 3 choices of toothpaste, and now fluoride or no fluoride. And the reason that we have that option is because people started asking for it and purchasing the option that was important to them, that wasn't just like the mainstream. But that purchasing thing is kind of an interesting, and I want your take on this, because it's so fascinating from like an outsider view, looking at different causes. Let's use breast cancer as an example, because there's no cure for breast cancer like on the horizon, right? But they seem to very successfully get hundreds of people for walks.
Yeah.
Football players wear pink shoes, but there's not like an end in sight. So why do they not feel like a drop in the bucket, yet causes like this, it does? Heavy sigh, right?
You've asked the eternal question. I mean,
I think it's consumerism. Like, there's no way to like successfully participate in environmentalism in the consumer model. Like, you can't buy your way to a healthier planet.
Right. Whereas I mean, you could technically, but so for example, like the recycling industry, that's a really big topic for a lot of people. People get all up in arms about like, well, my city doesn't recycle, or, they just throw it in the landfill when they pick it up in the recycling truck. But like, what we try to tell people is like, well, that is a product in itself. Like the output of a recycling facility has to be sold somewhere for it to be worth it for them to even recycle. So, when you go to the store as a consumer, you were talking about like market signals. We tell people all the time, like, well, there's this thing called post-consumer recycled material, PCR material. And a lot of packaging is starting to display those messages. So like this cereal box is made of 30% post-consumer recycled material. So we do let people know that, like, hey, if you're at the store and you see a choice and one product does not contain post-consumer recycled material and the other one does, like, that is up to you as a consumer. You have that power to signal the market in that way, to really say, like, this is what I would prefer.
That's true. Yeah, I like what you said in our first episode, our first version of this conversation about the reason that the 3 R's start with reduce. Can you touch on that?
Right.
Because it has literally stuck with me since that first time that we recorded it.
Yes, it's so important. I mean, and that's, again, it goes back to it's hard for people to change their lifestyle, but like, we have so many opportunities throughout our daily lives to make choices. And, one of those choices is like, well, do I use this plastic cup that's at my office, or do I use a reusable water bottle? Like, and it sounds like people hear that all the time, but it sounds exhausting after a while, but it's accurate. I mean, everyone has the power on an individual level to make choices that reduce. So that is the first R in the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, for a reason. And we try to point that out as much as we can, that, a lot of people just skip to the last R, recycle, and they say, I'm doing my part, I'm good. But it really is a hierarchy. And so reduce first, reduce as many single-use items as you can. I mean, there was a big, stink not that long ago about plastic straws.
Oh,
and like,
right.
I feel like it got so hyped because, and not really,
God.
people didn't really understand the origin of it. It was kind of just made out to be this silly, ridiculous thing. Like, oh, these environmentalists want us to skip the straw. Like, how stupid is that? And it's really just about eliminating the unnecessary plastics, like, you don't really need it.
Yes.
But like, we do need plastics in other areas, like the medical field. Obviously, we have to have plastics there. Like, life-saving devices are made of plastic, but you don't really need a straw. So it's just about those choices.
I am so glad you brought up the straw thing, because that leads me to my next barrier that people trip up on in any cause, but I think it's so perfectly demonstrated environmentalism. I saw a post of someone I'm friends with on Facebook, not in real life, and she posted a photo of a drink at a restaurant, and it had probably 24 straws stuffed in the drink. And she was like, take that, you bleeding heart liberals. And I was like, what the hell is happening? So, political entanglement, to borrow a phrase from Jada Pinkett Smith. How do you get people involved in aspects of environmentalism without making them feel that they're cheating on their team? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it's really just like connecting to what they think is important. So, for example, if the economy is important to them, there are so many ways that being environmentally sustainable is way less expensive than the opposite. Even though, in making those changes that need to happen, you will be cutting certain industries out of the picture ultimately, but they have, I'll just come out and say it, fossil fuels, those industries are very powerful, but they have a choice. There are ways that they can go about changing their business model. I am not an oil executive, so I say this as though it's like the easiest thing in the world, but like, they as companies can choose to make moves towards alternatives and incorporate that into their business model, because they know it's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, it's the thing that makes them a lot of money, and it's fairly inexpensive for them still.
And that's one of those areas that people get really, I don't know, they get caught
protective or
Well, it's confusing because, they're like, well, did you put gas in your car to drive here? And it's like,
yes.
All right, well, this is not a fruitful conversation. But I love that you brought up fiscal savings, because I feel like if we're gonna address the two teams, the two political teams, right?
Right.
Typically, the Republicans are more fiscally conservative. So if that's their rub, to bounce off of your point, then it would be beneficial in the case of environmentalism to kind of talk about how they can save money. And I have thought that I was reducing already and saving money, because it's kind of hard to measure, right? Sometimes. So I found this app called My Little Plastic Footprint. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's out.
I haven't.
It's really cool. You would like it. I think it's made in Amsterdam, but it gamifies reduction. And so it has all the categories: kitchen, house, yard, recreation. And then you hit the button and it informs you hey, did you know, instead of buying cotton rounds to take off your eye makeup and your nail polish, that you can buy these. Here's a few that we recommend. And so I have saved a lot of money by just switching to a menstrual cup for my period products, not buying cotton rounds. Those cotton rounds are almost $4 now, so I think you're onto something with the fiscal part, that everyone loves to save money. No one's like, oh, I hate saving money. It's the worst.
I know.
Right?
Exactly. I love spending every penny that I make.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this kind of leads into the next one, which is, if you're not for us, you're against us. The idea that there's no room at the table for those who are not all in, kind of like the gasoline situation. Oh yeah, right. Well, do you like putting gas in your car? It's okay, that sort of way of framing things really leaves people out.
It's very extreme. There's there's no either or. It's just oh, well, you're not all in because you put gas in your car.
Yeah. And I feel like you are such a good, your disposition, the way you communicate is so inviting. And even the way that you personally live your life, you're oh, well, I forgot my fork today. It happens.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it's just about, like I said, every day we have choices that we can make. And, it's not about being perfect. It's about striving. We cannot always be perfect. So people do apologize around me for, oh, I'm sorry, Sigrid, I got a cup, or I got a lid with my cup. I'm so sorry. It's no, what are you talking about? Stop apologizing to me. I'm not the sustainability police, but it's so funny. The amount of times that happens is really funny. But
I think we're conditioned to shame, though. I think there's a reason. I think this many causes, when you get passionate about it, it's easy to go, don't you care about human trafficking? Don't you care about da-da? But you kind of have to exercise some executive function over those strong feelings and passions, because you're going to push people away rather than attract them.
Well, and like I said at the beginning, it's really, you have to be practical. It's like trying to live your life on a fad diet or something. Eventually you're going to just crash and burn. And so it's about, consistency. It's about moderation. It's about just practicality and investing your time in what you care about. And so I'll just say, for example, I do drive a car that takes gas, but I don't have a hybrid.
Gasp.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But I do try in a lot of aspects of my life. And one of the things that has been a new thing for me is I've used a Lomi. Have you heard of Lomi?
No.
Okay. So it's an appliance. It's a countertop composter. And I just got it last year. This is not a paid sponsorship. They're not paying me to be here, but I love loamy so much. And like, you know, a lot of the research right now is pointing to the fact that food waste is a major contributor to climate change because of the methane that it gives off when it reaches the landfill. Like, I can get into landfill dynamics, but basically, you know, it's anaerobic decomposition. So there's no oxygen involved. So that's what releases methane. Whereas in like a compost pile, there is oxygen, it's oxygenating. And so it doesn't release methane. So this loamy is a countertop composter, and you put all your food scraps in it. None of our food scraps go in the garbage anymore, unless it's like, you know, fats, sugars, you know, that kind of thing. But we don't have a ton of that anyways. But it dehydrates and grinds up your food scraps, and it literally makes dirt in a countertop appliance. And then we just dump it in the garden or dump it outside, and or in our actual compost pile, and it makes phenomenal compost that we use in our garden. So that's been a new addition for me. You know, like, I'm still learning. I still adopt new things. So it's never too late to start. You know, like, if you see something that you care about or you want to try it out, like, go for it.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. Give it a try. Exactly. Yeah. I love that. Before we wrap up, was there anything else that you wanted to share about, you know, getting people on board with your cause or just a cause in general?
Sure. Well, at our corner, we love collaboration. You know, we want to collaborate with individuals, businesses, other nonprofits. You know, we all want to work together for basically just a better place to live, work, and play, right? Like, we're all pulling in the same direction. We all fill our own little niche in the community. So we want to help others as much as we can. And then, you know, we want others to become involved in our mission and our cause. So probably the best way to support us and what we're doing is by becoming a member. We have a membership program, and it's basically $5 a month. And that supports all of our cleanup initiatives, all of our trash talking and fighting dirty, you know. So that is a huge help for us. And then we support the community by picking up litter, keeping it clean, green, and beautiful.
I love it. And where can people find your organization on socials and internet?
Yes. So our website is Our Corner Escambia, and that is also our social media handles, Our Corner Escambia on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having this talk with me. Thank you so much for being my first guest and my 170th guest, whatever number this is. I really appreciate it.
I love that. That's so cool. Thank you so much for having me, Meredith. I love talking with you about this stuff.
Hey, you're still here. Thanks for watching. If you love breaking free from the algorithm to explore curiosity, join me each week by hitting subscribe and the bell for new upload notifications.